A phone call. I fall off the sofa because it's not my sofa, and I'm still drunk. It's my sister, Yasmin. I mean, she never rings me. 6 a.m.'s a strange time to start. Joseph, something's happened. What? What's happened? Think of the worst thing you can think of. I don't know. Daddy's dead. Her pause is less than a second. In that space, a vacuum rushes in to pull the air from my lungs. Entire worlds rise and fall in a measurement of time so minute, so vast, that before she says yes, the universe has already screamed it.
Yes.
And I scream back.
All this is a very long time ago. After the phone call, I'm lying in the half-light and the silence for what feels like a lifetime, suddenly rudely interrupted by this piercing shriek, which I'm horrified to learn is coming from me, loud enough to waken the dead drunk. And sure enough, the dead drunk do awaken. I then make my way up the stairs, shedding my clothes as I ascend to the bathroom, wherein I draw, then sit in a scalding hot bath. Doors wide open, in somebody else's house, Billy Bollock naked. Not my usual style, I assure you. Various other inhabitants of the house find me in said state, and when I explain my predicament, they say things like, "Fuck!" or "fucking hell," which is quite understandable in the circumstances because my father, Dr. Joe Nawaz, has been murdered across continents in his native land of Pakistan, in his holiday home in Pakistan, which is also meant to be our holiday home in Pakistan. But we're the Nawazes of South Belfast. We usually like to holiday a couple of weeks, mid-July-ish, in Donegal. Rob Nawaz might be from Pakistan, but he too enjoys a bit of an old vacation around the July fortnight in Donegal, not Pakistan. But first, it would be rude not to, a brief history of Pakistan. Always keep my notes under a telephone. 3,500 BCE, Indus Valley civilization. 2,500 cities, 1 million square miles, you say? Bada bing. There's complex social structures, urban planning, writing, drainage, also wheels. Back in Europe, sup Europe. Careful with that flint axe, Eugene. You'll have someone's eye out with that. Using a whole sheep's tooth to cut stuff. No, that's really cool. If you ask me, wheels are basically a product of sheep's tooth envy, frankly. 530-ish BCE, the Persians are coming. Well, the Persians are here. The Persians are leaving. The Persians get beaten by Alexander the Great, who takes over Pakistan, and he's like Greek and great. Then Alexander defeats Punjabi King Porus at the Battle of the Hydaspes River. Look, I'm just saying, if you're going to call yourself Porus, maybe don't fight in rivers. Bit later, Hindu king Chandragupta Maurya founds the Mauryan Empire. Well, you would name shit after yourself, wouldn't you? Quick aside, unlike my father, when given the opportunity to immortalize our family name literally in rock when he discovered a new mineral in Killala Beach in Mayo, decided to call it Killalite. He had one job. Chandra Group that drives out the Greeks gives them 500 elephants as a breakup deal to sweeten that deal. Speaking of sweetening the deal, 100 AD, OMG, sugar, sweet, sweet candy, comes to the Punjab. 1,000 years before Europe, who somehow still managed to have terrible teeth. And then, when they do discover sugar, those terrible teeth white dudes also think, we're going to need slaves for this one. Bless those liberal Enlightenment dudes. 644 AD, Islam calling, and boy, does it take. Wildly Moorish, so it is. So now we have lots of different ethnic groups speaking dozens of different languages, practicing different faiths, all united under the certainty that coronation chicken is not a real curry. 13th century AD, big shout out to my girl Razia Sultana. She's the Sultana of Delhi. First female Muslim ruler in a long line of not so many. She was popular too. Then, typical, she insisted on being called Sultan instead of Sultana. And then, I can't believe what I'm about to read, she began issuing her own coins. Women! That's enough of that. Bam, it's over for her. 750 years later, Pakistan has another female ruler who's also assassinated. There's lots of assassinaty stuff going on, you'll notice. Then, the greatest empire of them all comes to India, where the sun never set, sophistication, art, pluralism, culture. That's right, the Mughal Empire. Who else? Over the next 3 centuries, the Mughal Empire became the richest, most sophisticated civilization in the world. And then, oh yeah, the British came in the form of the pointy-headed East India Company. How you doing, lads? What a jolly good show they put on. Drinking char, eating chutney, wearing cummerbunds and jodhpurs before retiring to their bungalows and slipping into their pajamas. All Indian words, that's right, which the British borrowed. It wasn't just words that they borrowed. They also took back to Blighty. Blighty, yep, that's also an Indian word. There was also all that loot. Loot, you say? You got it. Indian word. There's nothing like being raw blind in your own language. Really culturally respectful, you know. And Britain gets very, very wealthy. You may be surprised to learn this tonight. Relieving India of its many resources. It's for India's own good, apparently. 1857, then, the first Indian War of Independence. Or, if you're British, that bloody Indian Mutiny. They've already been told about this sort of thing. It's a good effort, but sadly, no dice. Estimated 100,000 Indians are killed, but that's nothing. Upwards of 100 million of them die at the hands of the British Empire in the 60-year period following. That's British industry for you. The Indian National Congress then forms, led by Jawaharlal Nehru. Try saying that when you're drunk. For not altogether patriotic reasons. He's also shagging the wife of the Viceroy of India, Peggy Mountbatten. That's the wife's name, by the way. The Viceroy of India is Dickie Mountbatten. He's Charles III's. So weird saying that. He's Charles III's favourite uncle. Uncle Dickie is later blown up by the IRA on a boat in Sligo. 2 seemingly unrelated incidents of being shafted by the natives that I bring together in one ungainly mixed race body. There's also the Muslim League. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he's their guy, formerly mates with Nehru, and at first it's all one India, lads, but then, you know, sectarian and religious tensions stoked by the British. Can you believe such a thing? Leads inevitably to Jinnah calling for a Pakistan. This British-educated, whiskey-swilling, high ruler Jinnah is played by, who else? Christopher Lee in the movie of his life, obviously. Jinnah then starts saying, no, we need a Pakistan, you know, for Pakistanis. We're Indians at the minute, but not really. And we'll totally be Pakistanis when we create Pakistan. You know, for Muslims, even whiskey-drinking ones. I'm Jinnah, bitches. He didn't actually say that, but not on record anyway. 1947, the British finally give up India because they sort of have to. And anyway, they pretty much cleaned India out. Oh, it's a very parching history. They pretty much cleaned India out. When they first arrived, India's GDP was roughly 30% of the world's entire GDP. Greater than all of Europe put together, factoid fans. And by 1947, well, let's just round that up to 2%, shall we? Jinnah gets Pakistan, west and east, India's in between, all carved up, against the wishes of Mahatma Gandhi, who you may remember from the movie Gandhi, as played by Ben Kingsley, who to his credit is at least half Indian. Unlike entirely English civil servant Cyril Radcliffe, which makes him perfect for the historic task of dividing India up. I mean, Cyril's a man who's travelled as far as Paris once for a romantic weekend. That tells you a lot about Cyril, that he didn't return. There was no second romantic weekend for Cyril. But Cyril is given a Sharpie and a big map, and off he goes. The border comes down at midnight on the 15th of August, 1947. Millions displaced, millions more dead, fleeing east to India or west to Pakistan before it's too late. And for many, it is. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan then becomes brilliantly unpredictable at cricket and a feudal military state of staggering corruption and inequality, sort of totally inherited from the legacy of the British rule. East Pakistan fights West Pakistan after only 25 years together. East wins and becomes Bangladesh because they don't want to be Pakistanis anymore, especially ones like General Zia-ul-Haq. Think an Islamist Terry Thomas, if you can think of such a thing. Out of all the military coups in Pakistan, his is definitely top 2 or 3. He removes narcissistic landowner, but also popular Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 1977, possibly with definitely with US help. Then he hangs Bhutto for good measure. Some people think this is good, others think this is bad, a bit like the Stephen Nolan show. Then he bangs Bhutto up for good measure. And one of those people who thinks it's bad is Benazir Bhutto, Zulfi's daughter and lady ruler. She's a bit dodgy too, because women are perfectly capable of being dodgy as well, you know. She's assassinated 30 years later in suspicious circumstances. Probably the army, though, but not General Zia this time, because 20 years earlier, he went up in a plane with a box of exploding mangoes, which may have been done by a military rival, the Americans, or just particularly volatile mangoes. Pakistan be like that. Pakistan, then, 11th most dangerous country in the world, after only recently being rudely knocked out of the top 10 by new entries Syria, Libya, and Yemen. Militarized to buggery, deformed by US interference, military-sponsored fundamentalism, and locally sourced feudalism. The rich live like Maharajas, the poor live like not Maharajas. They mostly work the land, join the army, and that's just the men. It's not all doom and gloom, though. Generally cool people, bro. Honestly, varied, complicated, culturally rich. And hey, the greatest cricketer who ever lived was recently elected as Prime Minister. Imran Khan's such a... Oh, hang on a minute. He's in prison now, isn't he? No, he... Oh, he's back in. No, he's back in. I can't keep up. He's a great cricketer, though. What a country. You slay me, Pakistan. And that is the history of the state of Pakistan. Yes, thank you. There'll be questions afterwards. I'm speeding along in a car, a taxi, across town to my mother's house. It's a cold, bright October morning. The sun's hanging low in the sky. The driver's chatting football. I'm silent, smiling to myself. If he knew what I'm carrying in my head right now, it makes me smile a little harder, because I'm funny like that. All the while, my telephone's ringing. I've never particularly liked telephones. We're in my mother's house. All night, garbled, long-distance messages have been coming through from Pakistan. Garbled and long distance because all of this is a very long time ago. But gradually, piecemeal information has coalesced into brutal fact. Murder in Pakistan. They're only words in a certain order, but they're as dizzying and stunning as blunt force trauma. Cold, bright truth for a cold, bright October morning. At first, we want to bring the body back, but too much paperwork. Easier if he'd been a beloved pet, a labradoodle or some such. And at first, we were kind of annoyed about that, and we really want to make an effort. But then, Mum says, what's the point? Perhaps she's right. Why bury him here in the place that choked everything but the life out of him? And besides, Islamic ritual dictates that you have to bury the body swiftly. And besides, there's a family plot in Mardwal. And besides, we've been promised it'll be taken care of. And besides, what choice do we have? And besides that, Mum's already buried plenty before her time here. Bullets, alcohol, heart attacks mostly. But with Rab, she sort of says he half expects him to come through the door any day now. Me, I'm not so sure. you know the first thing I felt or experienced, whatever it is it a feeling? I felt light, like freedom. Sort of like whenever you were away for work or even at the shops, or better still, in Pakistan, visiting the fam. Like a reprieve from us. I mean, if this is freedom, how many years later? Shackle me now. Oh, you'll like this. No, you really will like. This is brilliant. I'll never forget it. I had to ring in. To say I couldn't come into work, and you only get to do this once in a lifetime. So I'm like, sorry, can't come in today, and they're like, oh yeah, Joe, as in, oh yeah, Joe, what's the excuse this time? And I'm like, bit delicate, really, but well, how best to put this? My dad's been murdered. And they're like, awkward silences, stuttering apologies. It's fucking mad. I know, right? Right? Right. A little backstory. Or I expect you're wondering how I got here. Rob Nawaz, Dr. Malik Rob Nawaz to you, flew into Belfast in the early 70s from the far-flung climes of Sydney, Australia, amongst other far-flung climes. Bit of a jet-setter in his time. He met my mother, Eileen, at the Regency Hotel. He was playing cards, she was not. And at first she was also not particularly keen. She probably had enough suitors to be getting on with, to be fair to her. But Rob was particularly persistent. He called round to see her parents, my grandparents, laden with bags of frozen meats, the better to woo them. And what parent would not be wooed by a bag of frozen meats, plural? My grandfather calls him the Seal on account of his velvety suits. And sure enough, before long, the Seal gets Eileen pregnant, to the horror of, oh yeah, everybody. Her parents, family doctor, parish priest, and other various pillars of the community all expect, they insist, no, demand that she give up this little bundle of joy / product of sinful miscegenation as soon as it's born, and then press reset on a virtuous Catholic life. But Eileen is stubborn and contrarian. You think they would know that? We certainly do. So at the last minute, she decides to keep that baby. And do you know who that little baby was? Well, let me give you a clue. What has 2 thumbs, speaks French, and was not given up for adoption? Me. After 2 or 3 months in reluctant board and lodgings with the Holy Sisters of Nazareth House, my mum has had enough of their, and I quote, ghoulish ways. She finds herself some spare change, picks up a telephone, calls Rob, come and get me. Oh, and your son. It's quite a phone call. So, the Seal gets the girl. They drive off into the sunset, or in the direction of Carryduff. Rob gets a job in the Ulster Museum in the geology department. And they have 3 more children, Yasmin, Farah, and Omar. All curiously sharing names with famous 70s and 80s celebrities. See how many you can spot. After a period of time, the Nawaz family settles down to a life with this slight vibration of unease, this feeling of being under vigil as defined by the time and the place they exist in, a sense that they're constantly being watched out for signs of otherness, of which there are quite a few. And these watchmen and sentinels are sometimes family members. Sometimes they do it when they're not even trying. And some do it especially when they're not even trying. It all serves to have this family, and Rob in particular, swimming in this mire of unbelonging. And he's a strong swimmer, to be sure, but hearts and limbs grew tired over years. Swimming against a current is for the strong, the hopeful, the confident, not for the jaded, the broken, those already broken. Hard exactly to trace the trajectory of that downfall when I too frequently buckle and turn coat against this alien in our midst. Yes, perfect English. We all know you spoke perfect English, and you had a small alphabet of letters after your name, but that did not stop the talk about language barriers at work. And, very stylish man. Yeah, stole half your wardrobe. Still have some of it. Bit ghoulish, maybe, but dapper. What was your word? Dapper? Gatsby-like? Your words. So that makes it all the more baffling then. Those haircuts. Around the world in 80 snips. A pudding bowl. No, a cereal bowl. Snap, crackle, lop. Nice. And then the schemes. Oh, yes, the schemes. All the scheming. Sending us to the top of the street, armed with nothing but these haircuts and a crate of shop-damaged orange Fanta to sell to, and I cannot believe I'm about to say this, passing orange men who were marching on the 12th of July. Repressed trauma prevents me from remembering exactly how many cans of warm fizzy orange we sold to those thirsty sons of Ulster. But let me tell you, I know it was not nearly enough. How was I to know other Pakistanis would find that all quite weird as well? Like all good stories, prologue, or a passage to Belgravia. Standing in front of a slightly dilapidated but grand-looking townhouse in 34 to 36 Lowndes Square, Belgravia, London. What's there, I hear you ask? Well, I'll answer that cry. It is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan's High Commission. I bound up the steps, through the double doors, and suddenly I'm back on Pakistani soil for the first time since I was 3 or so. And I am there because the remaining 5 Nawazes have decided to get their passports stamped with visas because they've decided to go to Pakistan. And to paraphrase a famous actor whose name currently escapes me, one does not simply walk into Pakistan. I'm standing there, looking at it all. 2 words to describe the High Commission of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Pandemonium. Utterly insane. There's agitated officials raising their arms and raising their voices against agitated people, trying to get things done. Nothing's happening. Everybody talking all the time. Everybody agitated in their own unique way. Little snowflakes of agitation, if you like. People speaking Urdu, possibly, I don't know, do I? But the interesting thing about Urdu, actually, not only is it a beautiful language for poetry, apparently, it's also not even in the top 3-4 first languages spoken in Pakistan, and yet it's the national language of Pakistan because of politics and all that. But imagine politicizing language. Mad brown people. Anglo-Saxon expletives scattered throughout like bits of glass on the forest floor. I recognize phrases that maybe don't have the equivalent translation in Urdu, like airport, 5 kilo limit, Dorothy Perkins. And then I recognize phrases that are just universal in any language. Shitty Indian cricket team. Yes, a bit of tribalism. Sorry, not sorry. It all serves to remind me of when Rab used to lapse from perfect English into babbling Urdu littered with English swear words when he was very, 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 very angry. Usually, that is to say, on the whole, majority of the time, most likely in the direction of me. And you can say what you like about the English language, but it's fucking great for swearing in. So I'm standing here, frozen to the spot by this melee, clutching our passports, doing a sad imitation of Charlie Bucket with his golden ticket. And an official amongst the myriad officials who is suddenly unattended to, gives me the eye and summons me over. He's not particularly impressed by me. Not much sympathy I'm feeling. I think maybe it's because I'm boring. My arms don't propel flailing arms. They just shrug apologetically. You're Irish? He's not asking me, he's telling me. It's all the more remarkable that I'm clutching 5 British passports, but I will take it. And as I begin to explain to him the whole sorry business of why 5 Irish people with British passports need to go to Pakistan, even I wouldn't believe me. I wouldn't let me in. It's time to rescue this. That's nothing, mate. Sure, if he was still alive, I would be going there on holiday. To Pakistan. Holiday. He doesn't see the joke. He's not laughing. If anything, he's a bit miffed. Pakistan's very beautiful. He shouts at me as he hands back the stamped passports. Of course it is. I mean, I can't wait to go. Every time I try to sound earnest, I sound the exact opposite. And the more earnest I try to sound, the more sarcastic I try to sound. I want the ground to swallow me up. I've only been here for half an hour, and I've already disgraced myself on Pakistani soil. This all bodes extremely well. You got up at dawn to pray. I heard you when I was in the spare room, when I was staying over. That was new, I thought. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're always Muslim. Didn't have like the yardstick, did I? Not sure what a Muslim yardstick is, to be fair. But I was lying there in the box room, 5 a.m. or so, noises, thinking, he's gone and lost what's left of his marbles. I mean, I didn't really try, did it? I mean, been away for too long. We were like strangers in familiar clothing. I mean, I think I finally, belatedly understand. I think I get it. You were trying to get something. You were trying to a time of faith. I clearly don't get it, but I think I get it. You were trying to preserve what was left of your marbles, if anything. I mean, you had lost a few marbles, to be fair. I wonder if it gave you any comfort. We're packed, we're stacked, we're ready to rack in popular vernacular. 5 Nawazes, Yasmin, Farah, Eileen, Omar, yours truly. 5-day visas to the land of our fathers and husband. Oh, we've also lawyered up Mr. Butt, don't laugh. Mr. Butt's people will be meeting us at Islamabad airport at the other side. Kushti, another Indian word. And Mr. Butt's also gently suggested, implied, asked us to maybe not mention too much to our family over there as to the exact nature and reasons for why we're going there. I mean, that's fair enough and everything, but they're hardly expecting us to go there on holiday now, are they? Jumbo jets are fucking huge. Wider than my street. I'm easily impressed. Too wide to play Kirby, and certainly not that you'd want to in a passenger plane. It's generally frowned upon. Here we are in a jumbo jet, but British Airways flight to Islamabad, starting to feel real. I kick back and order a cheeky beer, and this beer is very cheeky indeed. It's about £10 worth of impudence, in fact. Bet you couldn't get one of these in Pakistan Airlines. I quip. All you need to know about my family is it's a sad tale that my talents have always gone unrecognised in our family. And so, as we take off and we push away from Ireland and the United Kingdom, it starts to feel like the beginning of something profound. And we're herring along the Mediterranean, and we're turning at the Bosporus, and we're bisecting the Arabian Desert. A pictorial aid in this situation, a good thing to think about is the Indiana Jones films with the planes flying over the ye olde map with the red line. Think that, only with extra in-flight overpriced beers. Oh, and in-flight entertainment. Stories were true. Movies on a plane? What the hell is going on? This is impossibly sophisticated. A little like turbulence over the Isle of Man's the best you can hope for in the short haul to Birmingham. So I sit back and start to flick through this list, and it's mostly cat shit. to be honest. Well, cat woman. Woman cat? Woman that is cat. Cat woman. Cat woman. There's two Scooby-Doos. Scooby-Doo new. Bridget Jones' Edge of fucking Reason. Perfect. Meet the Fockers. Hilarious sequel to Ben Stiller Vehicle, Meet the Parents. I repeat, hilarious sequel to Ben Stiller Vehicle, Meet the Parents. Banger on. So I'm sitting there with my overpriced beer and my hilarious Ben Stiller Vehicle when the pilot tells us that we're flying over Tehran. Quite low, as it turns out. And we're invited to enjoy the spectacle of an early evening in downtown Tehran. And I can see beautiful tree-lined streets with little cars driving along them and little people on the sidewalks walking about. And it's all so vivid and detailed and lovely and familiar and exotic all at the same time. This is the capital of the axis of evil, I'm thinking to myself. And it's lovely. Look at them all going about doing things just like us, only Iranian. Just then, as I'm fizzing and brimming with fraternal feelings and warm beer and Ben Stiller's hilarity, the view outside my cabin window changes. There's a fella about 30 yards outside that, but don't worry about him because he's ensconced inside a great big fuck-off Iranian fighter jet. I know a great big fuck-off Iranian fighter jet when I see one. It's all the shitty, pointy, missile-y things at the end of it. And then the people at the other side of the cabin are being treated to a similar view. Two great big fuck-off Iranian fighter jets. We've flown too low. We're in Iranian airspace. We're going to get shot down. Our pilot's a dick. We're really going to get shot down. Our pilot's a massive dick. Are just a few of the things that are going through my adrenaline-fueled brain at that moment. Why hadn't we flown with Pakistani Airlines? We'd be safe then, and I'd be £10 to the good. British Airways, they're targets, aren't they? I don't know, are they? I've seen the news. Passenger plane shot down over Iranian airspace has a very familiar ring to it. I can see the bloody pilot. I want to shout to him, we're not British. We're not British. Like, that's going to make a blind bit of bloody difference. And just then, just when I think my horror mountain peak has been reached and there is no more awfulness to comprehend, it hits me. Oh God, no. Please, not here. Not like a dirty dog trapped in a tin can, strapped up the in-flight. Ben Stiller's mugging, dead-eyed face cannot, no, it's not by me, cannot be the last thing on my cerebral cortex before I'm extinguished from existence forever. No. Why me? Why me? Why me? Why? No. Oh God. And the reason I'm doing this so much is that there's a sound effect that I haven't cued. But let me explain what the sound effect is. The sound effect is, I didn't activate it because I think I meant to say something 3 times, which I've completely forgotten. Oh yeah, here it is now. Anyway, the sound effect is Ben Stiller talking and then the sound of a plane crash. Clever, isn't it? So while I'm doing that, you're imagining, using your kind of all your senses, the idea, well, we can enjoy it together. So this is me on a plane, and the tumult in my brain, and Ben Stiller, and then that's the sound of the plane going down in flames. I'm probably dead at this stage. So this is where I come in. Ah, no, no! Spoiler alert. It's not the last thing that's ever fixed, and let's hope it never is. I think we navigated that pretty successfully. Give yourselves a round of applause. This is all about you. And despite subsequent therapy, I still haven't been able to finish Meet the Fockers. And you know what? That's okay. We touched down Islamabad Airport, kissed the tarmac, praise the Lord. Oh, Islamabad Airport smells earthy, petrol-y, people-y, and alive, oh, not dead. As I'm leaving the plane, after shooting one more evil at our sheepish-looking pilot, I spot on an empty seat that somebody has left behind a Dawn newspaper, crumpled. The very same newspaper that my father used to get in the mail every fortnight from Pakistan, plop under our letterbox from Pakistan. And I'm thinking, if that's not a sign that we're in Pakistan, I don't know what is. It could be more profound, but then not everything's about me, right? We make our way to customs to be faced with a bunch of stern-looking chaps with bristling moustaches. Sternness and bristling moustaches go well together, don't you think? And the sternest and more bristly of the lot of these men takes our passports and looks at them, and looks at our faces, and looks at the passports, and we're starting to think, I mean, we're not the usual diaspora sort popping back to Pakistan for a weekend, you know, but he consults an even sterner-looking fellow with an even more bristling moustache. And then after a while, of course, they let us through. And why wouldn't they? We got our visas, bitches. You know what I'm saying? So we make our way then. Our next hurdle is to find Mr. Butt's man in arrivals. Sure enough, there's a little fella there holding a piece of cardboard, emblazoned with the legend, Nawaz in felt tip. Now, usually, if I was in Belfast, I'd be like, guilty. But I'm using my old noggin here, and I'm beginning to think, you know what? We may not be the only Nawazes in the village anymore. Smart, like, you see. But it turns out we're the only Nawazes in the arrivals lounge, so it is indeed for us. This man, we'll call him Aziz, is like a typical middle-aged Pakistani dude. He's wearing shalwar kameez and sandals, and he also seems to possess superhuman organizational abilities. He shepherds us dumb and lost sheep through the thick throng and thicker noise and decants us into taxis before we can even venture a tentative salam alaikum, and which is quite impressive in and of itself. He then reassures us in English, well, of course in English, that everything's being taken care of before he sends us hurtling into Islamabad traffic. Hurtling in Islamabad traffic is terrifying. If you're the sort of driver who gets a bit miffed when you're at a box junction and lets someone out and they don't signal their appreciation, hurtling through Islamabad traffic is not for you. Very, 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 very scary. As we're tearing along the motorway towards the city, I'm suddenly distracted. The only thing that can distract me from the horror of being in this taxi is the beautiful view from outside my taxi window, which is the distant but glacially beautiful still Himalayan mountains. It's so strange to see them in this urban environment, so far and yet so present. Our taxi driver, as it turns out, has just taken a fare there. He tells us he's been to Kashmir. He says this in English. Of course, he says this in English. And then, applying a bit of what I call the old math, I work out that it would cost me about £5 to get this cab to the foothills of the Himalaya and beautiful but troubled Kashmir. And then a further bit of math, I'm always mathing me, I work out if I went in the other direction, we could get this taxi into Afghanistan and into the heart of downtown Kabul, equally beautiful but troubled, in about 4 hours' time. And then it gets me thinking, I'm starting to see links here, beauty and trouble, beautiful double helix, land of contrasts, really makes you think. Caid Míle Fáilte, you know what I mean? So tempted as I am to get this taxi to the Himalayas, I instead let our driver zip and beep and weave through the traffic and take us to the Islamabad suburbs, which are leafy. Well, let me tell you how leafy they are. The ratio of leafiness to suburb is vast. You couldn't even comprehend it. Lots of leaf, basically. We pull up at the house of our lawyer, Mr. and Mrs. Butt's family home. It's beautiful, whitewashed walls, beautifully tended gardens within. Mr. and Mrs. Butt are there to meet us, along with several members of their household staff. That's right, household staff. That was like a million miles, but just down the road from your Pakistan. That was something else. Household staff versus community well, community water buffalo, community everything, land. Speaking of land, do you remember the field? You should do. You heard it out. One of the many family favourites you got out for us in video. Religious tensions, religious antagonisms, land disputes. Ring any bells? Ring any bells? Not a million. Ding. Not a million miles away. Not a million miles away at all. Certainly not like Mr. and Mrs. Butt's house. Farah told me something about you the other day. You found a dead body in a cave on your way to school. By a river, by a tree. It's all a bit too Stephen King for my taste. Neighbour's wife, apparently. Why don't I know these things about you? We've got our own rooms, which is something we can't say back here. It's incredible. And what rooms they are. Billowing curtains, tiled floors, linens clean, and servants to take us to these rooms. It's all a bit. Well, the Butts are wealthy, obviously. I can't even say middle class exactly, because that's not particularly a thing here. Pakistan's a very deformed feudal society still, sadly. There's the generals and the landed gentry and the rest of them. Us, I suppose. We come down to dinner after enjoying our palatial rooms, and we have a lovely dinner with the Butt family. They're lovely, and we talk in English, of course, in English. And we discuss some of the itinerary going forward. And tomorrow we are going to go, our first stop is going to be the British Embassy, which is weirdly, turns out, is in the Embassy Quarter. Not sure how that's going to go, to be exact. Even though it's a British citizen that has been murdered, the fact he went and got himself killed in the land of his birth may put a bit of a spanner in the works. But we'll see. Hard to say. But right now, it's been quite the day, full of sights and sounds and genuinely WTF vibes. But we're here, Daddy-O, and that's maybe the most WTF thing of all. And as I drift off to sleep in what might be the most comfortable bed I will ever sleep in, I'm mindly ashamed of my concern that it may be 5 days before I get my hands on another vodka and Coke. Day 2. What the what? That's how I usually get up every morning, but it's particularly so when I have no idea where I am. Arabesque windows, beautifully tiled floors, billowing curtains. The bright light of the Islamabad dawn brings with it the first sounds of the city stirring to life. The call to prayer rings out from minarets all around. It's what you might call an Orientalist's wet dream. And as I lay there languishing between the sheets, contemplating previously on 5 days, I'm reminded that our family now know that we're here and we're going to have to probably see them at some point. And Mr. Butt has also, again, gently suggested that we maybe don't go into too much detail about why we're here with them. Crying shame, if you ask me. An even bigger shame, though, is that it takes 2 servants and 1 mother, my own, to knock me up to get down in time for breakfast, which I'm still late for. But I mean, I've been shaming this family in public for nearly 30 years. It's just what I do. I'm just being me. I'm just living my best life. After breakfast, Aziz takes us to the embassy quarter, to the British Embassy. And my most vivid memory of this is 1 second buzzing and vibrating and through the bustle, the insane bustle of the Islamabad traffic, and then suddenly materializing as if we're gliding along this airy, spacious thoroughfare of the embassy quarter with manicured gardens, garlanding edifices, post-colonial and colonial, each one housing an embassy from a various country. And would you believe it, there's the Holy See. Fancy the Pope's peeps popping up in the Pakistani capital that gives its name to the religion that the old pontiff's people used to persecute. Try saying that when you're drunk. It's strange to see it there, although the Catholic part of me goes a bit squee when I see it. It's also a very vivid metaphor of my own curious mixed heritage. If you care to kind of look into that metaphor, it doesn't hold up too much. But nevertheless, as I'm going past it, I'm also thinking, wonder if they're stashing any communion wine in there. But we haven't got time for that now. We've got to go to the embassy. So we're in the British Embassy, having a conversation with a polite but platitudinous minor official. Bit blurry, this one. Maybe because all of this is a long time ago. But also maybe it's because it's thin gruel that we're being served up. We explain that we want to leave Islamabad and we want to track down our Pakistani holiday home, look into the murder and find the grave. And jolly good show. Best of luck. I'm afraid we can't help you with that, old things, is the general thrust or limp gesture from Fuckwit Brown of the FO. That's not fair. Arsewit Brown of the FO. I'm not a monster. Although we do somehow acquire a bevy of boiler-suited lads with big guns to accompany us on our travels. Don't know how we acquired them. Memory's a bit hazy on that one. Perhaps you get them free with every 5 visas you get stamped for Pakistan. Lovely lads, though. Bummed the fag off pretty much all of them at some point. Those uniformed, smiling lads with big guns reminded me a lot of Cousin Saeed, who you used to make me write to. On reflection, there's a bit more of an age gap than I realised at the time. Saeed was in the Pakistani Air Force, and I was in 3rd year. Had some cracking correspondences, though. Dear Saeed, salam, can't spell the rest. How are you? I am very well. Currently got exams coming up and studying really hard. I'm a compulsive liar, but I'm also a people pleaser. Hope everyone in Pakistan is well. Your cousin, Yusuf. That's my Pakistani name. 2 weeks later, along with the Dawn newspaper through the letterbox, comes a letter from Saeed. Dear cousin Yusuf. Did I say that was my Pakistani name? Dear cousin Yusuf, lovely to hear from you. Delighted that you're working hard and studying hard. Please keep it up. I'm currently in a military base waiting to be scrambled for a bombing mission over Kashmir to defend against the Indian enemy, to die if necessary, or indeed preferably. Give my love to auntie and uncle and all the cousins. Best, Saeed. God damn it, Saeed! Mic drop. How am I meant to follow that up? More lies about studying? Dear Saeed, I'm still studying. I suppose I could pretend that I was in the RA, but I mean, it wasn't. That was you trying to grow some connective tissue, obviously. And that was me trying to please you, or at least not displease you. Oh, Christ, remember that poem? I can't believe I wrote a poem. Showed you a poem whenever my granny died. Well, it was the least I could do for the old girl after. It's just occurred to me, you did a lot of that. Sitting around, waiting to hear news of the loss of another loved one. After the embassy, it's time for a bit of retail therapy. Mrs. Butts and her daughter take us, big old Hawaiian shirted tourists, downtown Islamabad for a bit of shopping and food. And Islamabad is it's a bit like any other capital city, only, it's got big office blocks and shopping emporium and stuff, but it's not very attractive. Lahore, down the road, it's a pretty city. Lahore's so pretty, it almost can scarcely look at itself, one of those cities. But Islamabad's more of an administrative capital. Think a subcontinental Milton Keynes, if you will. But we do get to try a Pakistani McDonald's, or a Paki Maki D to me, but not to you. You're not allowed to say that. And you should be ashamed of yourselves, frankly. And what's the difference between a Pakistani McDonald's and a local McDonald's? Well, thanks to the global hegemony of McDonald's and the corporate homogeneity of the brand, there's very little difference, except for one thing. And the more sharp-eared of you, those that have been paying attention, will remember where sugar was discovered. So the difference that we have here in a Pakistani McDonald's is in the Coca-Cola. What's the best word to describe Pakistani Coca-Cola? Sweet! It's sweet! It's so sweet! It's sweeter than a Polaroid of frolicking kittens gadding about in a bathtub of Frosties. It's so sweet. But Pakistanis have a sweet tooth, and so do Irish Pakistanis. So after our diabetes roulette, we decide to go for a wander through the markets, and we find a DVD stall knocked off. Always knock off DVDs. Top title's Dirt Cheap, which is a great title for a DVD stall. Have you ever carried a separate DVD stall in this day and age? You can have that. Someone in my family, not me obviously, buys a compendium of Friends episodes. And I can see that to this day, unloved and unwrapped on a lonely shelf in my mother's house. As for me, well, it's got to be a box set of Akira Kurosawa's samurai films, because even in downtown Islamabad, I'm nothing if not wildly sophisticated and cultured. I know what you're thinking, and yes, I have watched a bit of one of them. Subtitles? Come on. It looks good on the shelf, though. We discuss the imminent, and by imminent, I mean fuck knows when it's going to happen, trial. They've apprehended two men, a gardening guy and a maintenance guy. Bungled robbery is the charge. But it doesn't help when you keep hearing little bits of contradictory information. Lying in wait, caught in the act, struggle, silence, cries, money taking, no struggle. It seems to me that the only absolute truths you can get in the Pakistani judicial system are those that you can afford. And then the cherry on top of the entirely delightful misery cake that we have is the prospect that these men will be sentenced to death, and they'll plead for clemency to my family, or to my mother rather, and she will be put in the position of having to decide whether to let them spend the rest of their lives rotting in a Pakistani jail, or... And all of this is underpinned by the uncomfortable feeling that the how, the if, the whys, and the whos of it are just minor bureaucratic details that annoyingly have to be filled in before the whole thing can be filed away. Day 3. This must be the place. Day 3 begins with a hearty breakfast in our lawyer's beautiful morning room. We're going to need it. Big day ahead. First of all, we go to Rawalpindi to see family. Rawalpindi is right next to Islamabad. In fact, they're so close to each other, they're often called the Twin Cities. I think it's Uncle Mir Abdullah's family we see in Rawalpindi. It's a funny thing, though. There are certain parts of this journey that I remember really vividly, and then there are others I don't remember at all, like this. I think I've got it into my head that family's a thing to be wary of, perhaps unfairly. But you know what they say, when you don't know who to trust, trust no one. Would that it were that simple. The Belfast Nawazes are a tight, lean tribe of 5, very few extended family members. The Pakistani branch, however, how best to explain this? Oh yes, I prepared a short monograph. And if you don't believe me, cousins, Yusuf, it's good to see you. I'm Saeed. I'm your cousin. No, I'm not cousin Saeed. Oh, no, that's another Saeed. But I'm a cousin. Yes, you're a cousin. Here's another cousin. That's Abdullah. Not to be confused with your second cousin, Abdul, who is, of course, your cousin. Abdullah is your beloved father, sister's husband, second cousin, and handyman. This is Samina. She's a cousin of cousin Saeed. And any cousin of Saeed's, no, not me, Saeed, cousin Saeed, although I am your cousin. Her father and your father ate the same meal once. What a meal that was. We still talk about it. And this is Hassan. He's your cousin. You know the other Saeed, your cousin Saeed? Well, Hassan is Saeed's nephew's son. Your cousin. His sister is also your cousin, and her cousin is, well, of course, your cousins. And this is your cousin Mohammed. He's your uncle's. What do you mean, uncle's what? He's just your uncle's. And that chap, helpfully making strangling gestures in front of your mother. Yes, that's dear cousin Badawi, always trying to be helpful, he is. That's where your father was garroted. Yeah, related? What do you mean related? He's your cousin, isn't he? No, I've never met him before either. Shall we get the police to move him? No worries, cousin. And then, it's a house hunting time. Told you it was a busy day. Off we poodle into the Punjabi Badlands, our motley array of guards, guides, family members, hangers-on, our own wee heart of darkness and our black SUVs. Destination, Talagang, the town, small town where Rab was murdered in his, our Pakistani holiday home. The further out of Islamabad we travel, the more and more Western trappings fly away like protective, heat-resistant tiles flying off a doomed space shuttle mission. Female faces get fewer, stares get more intense. My mother and my sisters have taken the very sensible precaution of wearing traditional Pakistani dress. Whereas my brother and I, well, there's a photograph of Omar and I in Pakistan. And it doesn't so much look like we're in Pakistan as in a really rubbish early noughties boy band. Think 5. -3. I've never felt so culturally, alienatingly Western. That is to say, I've never felt this white before. Not sure I like it. We stick out like big-thumbed Belfasters in the Pakistani countryside. The letter. Oh, I know there's many letters, reams of letters. Small forest's worth of letters, but the letter, the arranged marriage letter. Good Pakistani girl. I mean, we had our over the years, but my God, that was some stunt. That was some old school moves. It's the girl I felt sorry for. I don't even know how you managed to convince her parents to even let's think this through. In his late 20s, has a child, out of wedlock, with an English woman, likes a drink, between employment. I mean, it was becoming less plausible than a scene from East is East. But yet, you knew it was futile. That wasn't the point. You just kept buggering on. That's what you did. Industrial reserves of fretting, scheming, and buggering on. It's good that you got to meet Eli, though. I mean, I could see that you were good at that. Like, it was odd seeing that at a remove. Yeah, you got 13 of the wee buggers now. You're welcome. We arrive at the outskirts of Talagang, and we pull up outside a local police station. Our tires spin dust into the air. The heat is thick, viscous. You can almost taste it. A disinterested-looking police chief surveys us like he's got better things to be doing than talking to these Gora. Our interpreter has a wee word. Currency may or may not have changed hands. And suddenly he's very conversational, very verbose all of a sudden. Of course he remembers the case. The villains were caught. Terrible men. You don't say. He was in charge of it and he saw it through to the end. Is that a fact? And he will happily take us to our Pakistani holiday home, which has been locked up for the last 6 months since the murder happened. And off we go. And we drive. And we're getting closer. And we're getting closer. We know nothing about this place. And we're getting closer. And we're getting closer. Why did he make what? Why are we here? Is this our legacy from Rob? And we're getting closer. And we're getting closer. Here was a place he had not prepared us for. And yet here is where we are.
Whole town's turned out for the grand reopening of your gaff. Add 5 Nawazes, 4 guys with guns in boiler suits, 3 carloads of relatives, 2 flustered police officers, and 1 slightly pompous local police chief. Chain cutters applied, double doors swung open. Bingo. Our Pakistani holiday home. Everything is exactly as it was, the exact moment that you were murdered. A crime scene frozen in amber. There's the bed. Well made, of course. Your good shoes, carefully aligned. Under the table, perpendicular to the bed. Just so. Jacket hanging neatly over one arm of a chair. Just so. You will have been annoyed by the unwashed dishes in the sink, though. I hope the dishes weren't on your mind at the end. I mean, were we? You were probably just too busy trying to stay alive. To keep breathing. To keep being. That's alright. You're only bloody human, Rob. And you know, just occasionally, there are those rare moments in life when the dishes can wait.
Among the findings in the coroner's report are the following details.
Contents of victim's stomach include a small volume of tea, milky, 2 small pieces of toast, triangular, and oh yes, they have indeed been chewed. Does anybody fancy a cuppa? I know I do.
Tea and small triangular pieces of toast. When I read that for the first time, cry for the first time, and I'll cry again at some point in the future. But not tonight. Tonight, I sleep in luxury in Islamabad to dream of breakfast, booze, and unwashed dishes. Day 4. Grave encounters. Back up at it, you ugly lot. What is this, a holiday camp? Come on. Once more under the breach. Today's destination, Mardwal Village, Kushab District. Thank you for flying by the seat of your pants, Airways. By this stage, we are just totally cool with being escorted by armed guards everywhere. It's just something we do. We've even started stopping at roadside shops for sandwiches. We're that blasé. And so, once more we assemble, and we drive, and we drive, and we drive. And where I come from, if a loved one moves up to the north coast, it feels like a grievous abandonment. Here, it's barely nipping to the shops, and we drive, and we drive, and the landscape changes. It becomes more rugged, more red. I want to say Martian, but I haven't been to Mars before. And we drive, and we drive, and we drive. Time enough for the utterly alien to become slightly more familiar, slightly almost, but never entirely. And we drive through this vast, ancient basin that was once Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim. And we drive, and we drive. And just down the road over there, just go over the border, is Amritsar, which houses the sacred temple of the Sikhs. And on we drive, and still we drive, and we drive. And Rab's village, too, was once Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim, neighbours, colleagues, enemies, rivals, whisper it, perhaps even lovers. Partition put paid to that. And we drive, and we drive, and we drive, and we drive, and you can almost hear the land sighing with the sadness of that history. And we drive, and we drive. There is more than geology that scars these rocks. And we drive, and we drive, and then we stop driving. We're here. Where is here? Reddish sort of hills, agricultural activity, cattle, kind of settlement, a village in the near distance. That's Rab's family village. And, oh yeah, it's unmistakable. Whatever part of the world you care to croak it in, you possibly end up in something very similar to what I'm looking at right now. It's a little cemetery with a little picket fence with gravestones cocked at jaunty angles like workers on a fag break. And in the midst of all this familiarity, Rab's gravestone still stands out, and we spot it immediately. It's the only one written in English, left to right, reassuringly Roman in alphabet. Dr. Joe Nawaz, 1940 to 2004. And I'm looking at it, and it's ridiculous. Standing here in this blazing, desiccated place, presided over by a big, fat Clementine sun, a mildly curious water buffalo starts ambling past, its head jerking in a staccato-like motion like it's being propelled along on rusty roller skates, its neck generating just enough kinetic energy to allow the bell around its neck to slowly, half-heartedly ring. And I'm standing here looking at that stone with that name on it, and it's ridiculous. And I'm suddenly thinking, and the thoughts are probing and prodding into the tender recesses of my flabby memory like unwelcome exploratory fingers. And I'm thinking how Rob was born and raised not yards from where we're standing, and we're standing here now because he went over there. And this man who I've loved and feared and defied and disappointed, this man who's coloured our lives so vividly, this man who imported the name Nawaz to Belfast, well, he's right back where he started, full circle. Makes you wonder what all the fuss was about. And just then, on another groove, unbidden but not entirely unexpected, the opening refrain of David Bowie's Life on Mars starts playing in my head, round and around. It's a god-awful small affair. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. It's a god-awful small affair. Memory, experience, joy, loss, grief, these things turning and turning, these tasks our brain sets to. It spins yarns, plates, lies even, the better to keep us the most sane, the least bruised if we're lucky. And if we're really fucking fortunate, one day this deaf, dumb and blind captain will somehow stumble upon the lever that floods us with light to show us the who and the how and the who and the who and what's it to you anyway, in the midst of such grief as fixes my guts to the floor. Can't afford to get fixed anyway, so exorcism it has to be. And can't invoke and can't provoke and can't revoke and can't invoke and can't provoke and can't revoke. It is funny. It is funny. And suddenly I'm standing arm in arm with you. We're carrying Granny's coffin. I'm taller, you're stronger, resolute. And then I've come home and you're holding me. And I think, he's never going to let go. Why is he shaking? And then suddenly we're all standing here and it doesn't feel like you're here, but I know that you are here. The last time we were all together was at Granny's funeral. That's funny, isn't it? So why is nobody laughing? And you know what's even funnier? I just realised the last time we actually had any physical contact was arm in arm carrying Granny's coffin. that can't be the punchline. I mean, ghosts don't need punchlines, do they? Especially not ghosts who used to watch Keeping Up Appearances. Besides, we can't stand there forever. Can we? Day 5. The rest is history. Or, what do you think it might be? Mangoes are not the only exploding fruits. Day 5 is the hangover. It's the come down. It's the wake up call. Day 5 is the point betwixt two worlds, the point past which there can be no return. Mum says she never wants to see Pakistan again. Mr. Butt keeps up the good legal fight in the face of wrangling, complications, family pressures, yada, yada, yada. Speaking of family pressures, everyday life, the here and now, the ever-present present begins its slow anesthetic work. And grief and rage cool to dismay that hardens to whatever this is. The connective tissue that Rob tried to grow across continents, languages, cultures, tears too easily Scabs over. Proceeds into daydream. A shadow memory of unrealized alternatives. There is a Pakistan. There is a grave. There is a Joe Nawaz. He's in that grave. He's also here, I suppose. He's me. He's us. But he's also absolutely nowhere. He's immaterial. Yesterday's man. And yet, the five of us fly back to Belfast, a sort of homecoming. It'll have to do. Tell a lie. Tell a lie. Unbeknownst to all of us, my sister Farah is pregnant with Maya on our trip. So it turns out that one of us got into Pakistan without a visa after all. So today is day 5. So's tomorrow. The day after that. What else could it be? So he was on the radio once, Radio Ulster, talking about birthstones. Disgrace, a man of science. Absolute bollocks. Talkity talk. People ringing in. Talkity talk. Do you know what? It's the strangest thing. I try. But I don't remember your voice. I mean, I can stretch and get bits of cadence, certain words. Crikey, I stole that one, but not your voice. Not you. Remember those extremely lengthy, extremely verbose, extremely irate voicemails you used to send me? There was 2 kinds. There was verbose and irate, or verbose and angry. Got to the stage where I just deleted them. 10 seconds of angry voicemail, eh? You know what they say about ghosts, don't you? They don't do voicemail. And all of this, it's a very long time ago.